Imagine a London afternoon in the early 1920s. It's the kind of day that feels heavy with more than just rain. It's a world of grey skies, soot-stained brick, and the suffocating weight of social expectation. The air is damp, the light is dim, and for many women of the era, the atmosphere is more than just weather, it's a way of life. This is the starting point for Elizabeth von Arnim's 1922 novel, The Enchanted April. The story begins with a sense of quiet desperation. We meet Mrs. Wilkins, though most people call her Lotty. She is a woman who has spent her life being essentially invisible. She is a wife who moves through her domestic duties like a shadow, fulfilling her roles without ever really being seen or heard. She is deeply unhappy, but it's a dull, manageable kind of unhappiness that has become a habit. Then she meets Mrs. Arbuthnot. Rose Arbuthnot is quite different from Lotty. She is a woman of rigid piety and iron-willed composure. She is the kind of person who finds strength in duty and finds her identity in being a good wife and a good Christian. But even Rose has a crack in her armor. The spark that changes everything is a simple, impulsive moment. Lotty, driven by a sudden, uncharacteristic surge of agency, finds an advertisement for a medieval villa in Italy. It's a place called San Salvatore, a sun-drenched escape that sounds like a dream compared to the London fog. When Lotty shares this impulse with Rose, something unexpected happens. The mere idea of the Italian sun acts as a catalyst, stirring a dormant longing in Rose. She finds herself secretly yearning for the beauty and the light that the advertisement promises, a desire that sits in direct conflict with her sense of religious and marital duty. They don't go alone. To make this escape a reality, they recruit 2 other women, creating a group of 4 who couldn't be more different. There is Mrs. Fisher, an eccentric older widow who is obsessed with the romanticism of dead poets and the dignity of the past. She represents a certain kind of traditional, stable Englishness. And then there is Lady Caroline, whom everyone calls Scrap. Scrap is a beautiful, cynical socialite who is exhausted by the constant draining attention her beauty commands. She wants to be anonymous. She wants to escape the tyranny of being a woman who is always being watched and judged. The journey from England to Italy is described as a transition from darkness into light. The travel is difficult and somewhat frightening, a movement through a landscape that feels uncertain. But when they finally arrive at San Salvatore, the change is visceral. The novel describes the arrival as a flood of electric light. Suddenly, the grey, muted tones of their lives are replaced by iridescent colours, the scent of blooming flowers, and the warmth of the Mediterranean sun. Once they settle into the villa, the landscape begins to do something profound to them. San Salvatore isn't just a setting, it acts as a psychological catalyst. The beauty of the place begins to strip away the social masks these women have spent years perfecting. It's as if the environment itself is forcing them to confront who they are when no one is watching and when they aren't performing their assigned social roles. Lotty, the once invisible Mrs. Wilkins, undergoes the most radiant transformation. In the light of Italy, she sheds her timidity. She moves from being a repressed, negligible wife to a woman of profound, selfless joy. She becomes vibrant, present, and almost spiritually free. It's not that her life in London has vanished, but her capacity to experience happiness has been radically expanded. Rose, however, has a much more painful unravelling. For Rose, the beauty of Italy is almost an affront to her previous way of life. The sheer, unadulterated joy of the natural world forces her to confront the emptiness of her rigid, stony religious devotion. She begins to realize that the goodness she had practiced, the quiet, dutiful, self-denying goodness, was actually a form of emotional numbness. She is forced to navigate the tension between the life she thought she should want and the life she is actually starting to feel. Lady Caroline, or Scrap, finds that even in paradise, her internal struggles follow her. She struggles with the existential loneliness that comes with her status. Even when she is trying to be anonymous, she finds it difficult to escape the weight of her own identity. She experiences a sense of disillusionment, realizing that even in a beautiful place, the social structures of the world still exert a pull. The group's dynamics are further complicated by the arrival of Mr. Wilkins, Lotty's husband. He is a man focused on professional social climbing, and his arrival brings a touch of the old, rigid English social order into the villa. His presence leads to a somewhat comedic, undignified clash with Lady Caroline, highlighting how out of place his preoccupations are in this new, liberated environment. But the real crisis arrives with Frederick Arbuthnot, Rose's husband. His arrival brings a web of social deception to the surface. It turns out that Frederick had been pursuing Lady Caroline under a pseudonym, Arundel. He had been pretending to be a single man in his correspondence with her, hoping to escape the stony morality of his marriage to Rose. This revelation is the climax of the novel's tension, a moment where the secrets of their English lives collide with the truth of their Italian experience. However, the resolution isn't a grand, scandalous explosion. It's something much more subtle and, in many ways, more profound. Instead of meeting Frederick with the judgment and coldness he might have expected, Rose meets him with an unexpected warmth. The transformation she has undergone in the sun has changed her very nature. She is no longer just the pious wife. She is a woman of instinctive, passionate love. She greets him not as a judge, but as a person who has rediscovered her own capacity for feeling. This shift in perspective challenges Frederick's own sense of identity and forces a reconciliation that feels earned rather than forced. As the month comes to an end, the women prepare to leave San Salvatore. They are not the same people who arrived. They are returning to their lives in England, back to the responsibilities and the social structures that define their world, but they are carrying something with them. They carry the scent of the Italian acacias, a symbol of the ephemeral but transformative power of beauty. When we look at the book as a whole, we can see that Elizabeth von Arnim is exploring a powerful idea, that character is not a fixed, unchangeable thing. The San Salvatore spell suggests that we are deeply influenced by our environment. By changing the light, the air, and the surroundings, the characters are able to see themselves more clearly. The novel plays heavily with the contrast between miserable goodness and happy goodness. There is the goodness of duty, of social obligation, and of rigid religious adherence, the kind of goodness that often feels like a burden or a performance. And then there is the happy goodness of personal joy, of connection, and of living authentically in the moment. The story suggests that the latter is not a sin, but a necessary part of being human. The villa itself serves as a liminal space, a threshold between the old life and the new. In San Salvatore, the hierarchies of London are suspended. In the sun, a socialite, a widow, a shy wife, and a pious wife can find a common ground that they never could in the grey streets of London. It is a place where the masks can be set aside, even if only for a little while. The use of light and colour is perhaps the most striking element of the book's structure. The movement from the sooty rain of London to the iridescent light of Italy isn't just a change in weather, it's a movement from repression to self-awareness. The darkness of London represents the shadows we cast over ourselves to fit into society, while the light of Italy represents the clarity of seeing our own desires and our own capacity for joy. Ultimately, The Enchanted April is not a story of total escape. The women do return to their realities. They don't burn their bridges to England or abandon their families, but they return changed. They have experienced a psychological and spiritual awakening that cannot be unlearned. They have learned that beauty is not just something to be looked at, but something that can act upon the soul, changing the very way we inhabit our lives. They carry the warmth of the Italian sun within them, even when the London rain begins to fall again.